pana Rogera Haenniego. Zapraszamy.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. My name is Roger Haenni. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Datum, and we are a decentralized data marketplace for structured data. And I'm going to say a few words about Datum in a minute, but I wanted to take a step back and talk about ICOs from a more holistic view first. So this year, $2.5 billion have been raised so far. And on one of the ICO tracking websites, there's 1,400 ICOs listed that have either happened this year or are going to happen. And you can see some numbers here, how much these ICOs raised. And the interesting part I want to point out is that in the last quarter, the number of funds that were raised has actually gone down a little bit. And so earlier this year, we saw some mega projects like ICOs and Tezos. ICOs, for example, has raised over $500 million so far. And in fact, they're still raising more money. Their sales still runs until next year. And so many have, of course, said, okay, this is a big bubble, and it's kind of similar to the dot-com bubble. And I just wanted to show this little chart here, which shows the valuation, the market cap of all companies listed at the NASDAQ in the year 2000. So at the height of the dot-com bubble, the valuation was actually over 6 trillion. So if you compare to the cryptocurrency market, the total market cap sits somewhere around 150 billion at the moment. So, you know, whether it is a bubble or not, it's definitely, compared to the big economy, it's not that big of a bubble really. So I'll try to give you some insights from the front line, what we did in our ICO and some learnings from that. So I'm sure you have heard data is the new oil. Companies like Google or Facebook make most of their revenues from advertising against your personal data, against your personal profile. And so we thought that's really not fair. You should be rewarded for some of this data as well. And we built a calculator. You can go to calc.datum.org to see how much is your data worth. How much is the data of an average person worth per year? And we came to this figure of $2,000. And you can read on the website our methodology to determine that. It's basically based on the ARPUs of these 20 companies that we have selected here. And the other problem with this data storage is that the companies always store this in centralized databases, and it's inherently insecure. So just a few weeks ago, Equifax in the US lost the personal data of every second American. So this is really the problem. Companies are vacuuming up all this data, storing it into a central database, and that database always gets hacked from the front door, or governments come and access it from the back end. So we're proposing a solution to this problem, a decentralized data storage network where individuals or companies can store data secured by their private key, and we use something called proxy re-encryption that allows people that have stored data to securely share this data or sell access to this data in a secure manner. And then on top of that, we are building a global marketplace for this data. So how did we go about doing this? So first of all, we thought, how can we build this decentralized network, and how can we incentivize people to run this network for us? So that's where the Datum token comes into play. And if you want to tokenize your business, you have to kind of take a step back and think, what is it that I really want to solve by tokenizing the business? And in our case, we wanted to build a marketplace, so we need 3 things to be in place to build a free trade marketplace. First, exchange of value. So it means for you to exchange some sort of currency, or in our case, cryptocurrency. The second thing is a rule of law. So any marketplace needs to have some conditions established that govern the data transfer in our case. And the last thing is a means of measurement. So how do you measure this data that gets exchanged, and how do you charge for it? So this shows what our smart contract does, and this is really important when you look at ICOs to figure out, so what is the utility of the token? There's been lots of talks about tokens being securities versus being utility. So in our case, there's really 3 main functions that the token performs. First of all, people that want to store data pay in our DAT tokens to store their data. Secondly, the people that run the network, in our case we call them storage nodes, but I'm sure you've heard about miners that run the Bitcoin network. So these people get also rewarded in DAT tokens for providing their notebook or their server to run our network. And lastly, people that are interested in buying data also utilize our token to actually purchase this data. And by using this smart contract, we can also decentralize the middleman in the middle. For example, if you look at something like eBay, if a transaction happens there, you actually need eBay in the middle. And if eBay receives the money, it will tell the seller, oh, I got the money, it's okay to deliver the goods now. And so we are replicating this system on a smart contract, which means that no one needs to trust us. People can basically trust the network and the code that runs the network. So we have an application that people can download. It's like a vacuum machine. You can connect some data sources that you have on your phone, Gmail, Facebook, HealthKit, and so on, and it vacuums up all of this data. And then it's put on our network, and companies can go and buy these data sets. And you as individuals are rewarded for this data. So you actually get the sales proceeds if you're providing this data. And we do have some hardware devices already that are actually Datum enabled. So these devices store the data instead of in their own central database. They store it securely on the Datum network where you own the private keys and you're in control of what happens to this data. And then we have our Datum API, which companies can use to submit data into this ecosystem. And of course, we have a blockchain explorer. So when we're talking about blockchains, you need to have some sort of interface that gives you a glimpse into what's happening in the blockchain. So I think an important thing that I want to mention is many talk about ICOs and focus on the fundraising aspect, but for us as a startup, it was really also about creating a community and creating a movement behind our business. And so ICO could really also be initial customer onboarding. And so just to give you some numbers of what happened to our project. So yes, we did raise some funds, that's great. But we also created a huge community, a huge following around this. So we started marketing about 3 months ago, and in those 3 months we managed to build a mailing list of 75,000 users. And that is pretty significant. If you normally, if you're a startup and you're starting to build your mailing list, you're probably not going to have thousands of people on the mailing list, let alone over 50,000. And similarly on all our social media properties, so we have 25,000 followers on Twitter and 8,000 people chatting every day in our Telegram chat group. And of course, some of this community building is based on the fact that we are selling tokens, that people want to buy tokens and expect this network to do well. But on the same time, these people also become customers of us. So that it really depends a bit on the ICO. If you're selling luxury watches and you're giving away free tokens, maybe you can't convert these users. But in our case, this is really our user community. People are waiting to use this app to basically earn more cryptocurrency, to earn more DAT tokens. And so for us, the main point is really about building this community and not just about raising the funds. And I think that goes for some of the bigger ICOs as well. If you want to learn more, you can learn all our details on datum.org. And we have a whole user movement around the hashtag #TakeBackYourData. And you can also see William Shatner, Captain Kirk explain what Datum is on our website. Thanks.